world is old, carved by silence and wind. Long before men traced borders upon the earth, before they named mountains or chained rivers, there were murmurs of a hidden valley, a realm beyond the reach of storm or sorrow. The tale passed from caravan to caravan, clinging to wool and incense, carried through the passes where air turns thin and sky meets soul. They spoke of a sanctuary where light was alive, where the heart found rest, and where time itself walked barefoot through gardens of snow. To the east, it was called Shambhala, the pure land of the wheel of time. To the west, it became Shangri-La, the horizon that forever recedes yet never fades. Across centuries, the myth transformed, yet its pulse endured the longing for a peace that could not be conquered, a wisdom that could not be owned. The Himalayas stand like sentinels of eternity. Their summits pierce the heavens, their shadows touch forgotten kingdoms. Among these peaks, the wind speaks in an older language, one that does not use words, but breath, distance, and the hush between. It speaks of a valley veiled in light, where snow gleams gold under a sun that never dies, and where every dawn feels like the first morning of the world. Countless souls have sought that place. Kings and wanderers, mystics and thieves. Some came with armies, some with prayers. Some mapped the sky by stars, others mapped the silence inside their chests. All believed the valley lay somewhere ahead, hidden behind ridges, guarded by ice. Yet those who truly glimpsed it swore that its gates did not stand in the mountains, but in the clarity of the mind that walks among them. Maps were drawn, burned, redrawn. Explorers vanished into blizzards, their names swallowed by the white. The few who returned spoke in riddles of music without sound, of cities that glowed without fire, of monks whose eyes seemed to see through centuries. Skeptics called them mad. Poets called them witnesses. Truth, perhaps, lived somewhere between. The seekers of old walked paths that no longer exist, following threads of rumor and faith. Some reached caves where silence pulsed like a heartbeat. There, they learned that Shambhala was not a fortress built of stone, but a realm built of insight, a state of being woven from compassion and clarity. They were told, when the world forgets kindness, this place will hide. When the world remembers it, the valley will open once more. Empires rose and fell while the legend waited. Scholars debated, mystics dreamed, soldiers searched. Yet the snow remained indifferent, holding its secret beneath endless white. The valley did not move, but humanity did, shifting, breaking, rebuilding, forgetting. The myth survived because something within us refused to die with the centuries, a flicker that outlives the collapse of towers and the noise of progress. There came a time when the West heard the whisper. Writers, explorers, and wanderers turned their eyes eastward. They chased the horizon through deserts and dynasties, sketching the outline of a paradise they could almost touch. In their stories, Shangri-La became a mirror of all we had lost: innocence, harmony, purpose. A novelist gave it form, a nation gave it a name, and soon the myth belonged to everyone, retold in voices that had never seen the snows. But myths are not owned. They breathe breathe where they are honored. And while the modern world built cities of steel and glass, the legend waited, quiet as a seed beneath frost. It found shelter in the chants of monks, in the still eyes of pilgrims, in the small gestures of mercy that survive every empire's fall. Even now, the wind that sweeps over the Himalayas carries a sound that is not quite a word, not quite a song, something older, both prayer and promise. Those who go seeking it today find no gates, no map, no kingdom carved into the rock. They find themselves confronted by reflection. The path climbs inward, not upward. The journey demands not strength, but sincerity, the courage to look within without flinching. The mountain is not an obstacle, it is a teacher. The snow is not a barrier, it is a mirror. The cold strips away what is false until only the essential remains. Imagine walking there, the crunch of frost beneath your steps, the thin air burning like incense in your lungs. The sun trembles on the ridges, scattering fire across peaks that seem to float between heaven and dream. The silence feels alive, vast, and listening. In that stillness, the old tales do not sound impossible. They sound inevitable. They say the people of the hidden valley live as if the world were sacred. Every action is deliberate. Every word carries weight. Their cities gleam not with gold, but with serenity. Gardens bloom in terraces of light. Rivers sing without haste. They have forgotten neither joy nor grief, but have woven them together into a harmony that outlasts both. Theirs is a civilization not of conquest, but of continuity, the art of living without wounding what sustains you. Perhaps this is the meaning of Shangri-La, not an escape from the world, but a remembrance of how to live within it without breaking it. To move gently, to speak honestly, to guard the fire of wonder in an age of noise. It is not the end of the journey, but the origin rediscovered. When you descend from the mountains, the myth does not vanish. It changes form. It becomes the small acts of compassion that defy despair, the moments of stillness amid chaos, the willingness to see beauty even in brokenness. The gates of the hidden kingdom close behind no one who walks with humility. They open quietly in the heart of those who have seen beyond themselves. And when the first light touches the snow, soft, golden, eternal, the world itself seems to breathe again. Not a new world, but the same one, finally seen with clear eyes. The horizon does not end, it unfolds. The whisper returns, carried by wind and silence alike. Peace is not found beyond the mountains. It begins where the mountains begin, inside you. Part 1: The Roots of Shambhala. The legend of the hidden kingdom was not born from dreamers alone. It began, as all enduring truths do, in silence, in the breath of mountains and the murmur of scriptures. Long before men called it Shangri-La, the mystics of ancient India spoke of Shambhala, a realm that lies neither wholly in the world nor beyond it, but between, a threshold where the human and the divine meet in perfect balance. In the twilight centuries of the first millennium, When Buddhism had spread across the Himalayas like fire over snow, new teachings arose, vast, luminous, and intricate. Among them shone the Kalachakra Tantra, the Wheel of Time, a vision not merely of ritual, but of the entire cosmos breathing as one living organism. Within its verses lies the first recorded echo of Shambhala, a kingdom ruled by wisdom, guarded by compassion, and destined to awaken the world when darkness reigns. The texts speak of its first sovereign, King Suchendra, a ruler of deep stillness who journeyed to the north to seek understanding from the Buddha himself. There, upon a lotus rising from the lake of Anavadapta, the enlightened one revealed to him the secret rhythm of existence, the Kalachakra, the wheel that turns within all hearts and stars. With that teaching, Suchendra returned to his land and built the capital of Kalapa, a city said to gleam like dawn upon the roof of the world. He wrote 12,000 verses of truth, and in doing so, drew the boundary between illusion and awakening. But Shambhala was never meant to be found by armies or merchants. The scriptures insist it cannot be reached by foot alone. Its gates open only when the traveler has crossed the 8 rivers of ignorance within himself. The journey is inward, through the wilderness of one's own desire and fear. To those who do not yet understand, the valley is hidden behind snow and storm. To those who have seen clearly, it lies closer than breath. And yet, throughout history, mankind has tried to make it real, to anchor the ineffable upon maps. In the monasteries of Lhasa and Samye, monks debated its geography with the same fervor that emperors debated war. Some declared it north of Kashmir, others beyond the Gobi, others still within the unseen folds of the Pamir. Pilgrims wandered into deserts and vanished. When they did not return, it was said the mountains had claimed them in mercy, that they had crossed the invisible threshold into peace. The great teachers did not discourage the search. They knew the legend was more than metaphor. It was a compass for the soul. Seek it, they said, for in seeking, you become worthy of finding. Thus the myth served as both map and mirror, a story that led outward and inward at once. Across generations, whispers of Shambhala grew into an invisible network of belief. It reached from the plains of Bengal to the plateaus of Tibet, from the monasteries of Bhutan to the courts of Mongol Khans. Even conquerors who bent continents beneath their will paused to listen when the rumor crossed their path. For in every ruler, even the ruthless, there sleeps the ancient hunger for transcendence, a yearning for the crown that no gold can buy. In the chronicles of the 10th century, Tibetan scholars recorded strange celestial alignments. The conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, the eclipse of suns over snow. They took these as signs that the age of renewal had begun, that the hidden kingdom was stirring beneath the skin of the world. The Kalachakra prophecy spoke of 32 kings who would guard its wisdom, until the final age, when humanity, exhausted by its own brilliance, would call out again for truth. Then from Shambhala, a new ruler would ride forth, Rudrachakran, the wrathful wheel-turner, to end the reign of ignorance and restore harmony to the earth. To the Western mind, this sounded like apocalypse. To the Eastern, it was redemption. For the end is not destruction, but awakening, the breaking of the old skin of time. Thus, Shambhala became not only a place of refuge, but a promise that the cycle of darkness would always give way to dawn. But prophecy is a double-edged gift. Where it inspires, it also tempts. In the centuries that followed, princes and mystics alike began to search for Shambhala, not for enlightenment, but for power. They longed to harness the secret knowledge said to rest within its libraries. The science of perfect harmony, the key to mastering the elements, the music that orders creation itself. They looked to the mountains with ambition instead of awe. And the mountains, patient as eternity, gave them silence in return. Still, there were others, nameless monks, barefoot pilgrims, shepherds whose eyes had seen beyond the visible, who understood that the kingdom was not lost, because it was never a thing to be possessed. They told their children that Shambhala is a mirror, and the world is its reflection. When the reflection grows dark, the mirror waits. When the world grows quiet again, the image returns. Legends of its geography multiplied. Some placed it beyond the snow deserts of western Tibet, guarded by a ring of impassable peaks. Others swore it hid beneath the sacred lake of Manasaravar, its spires shimmering beneath the water like inverted constellations, and some claimed it floated above the earth itself, suspended in the ether between two breaths of the cosmos. Every account disagreed on distance, but all agreed on one thing. The path to it begins in faith and ends in transformation. As centuries turned, the legend ripened. What had begun as a whisper in the sutras became a constellation of stories spread across the roof of the world. Merchants carried it through the Silk Road, mingling it with Persian myths of Arianavija, a paradise of eternal spring, and with Greek tales of Hyperborea, the land beyond the north wind where mortals lived in harmony with the gods. The same vision surfaced beneath many names, as if humanity, scattered and divided, still dreamed one dream in many tongues. In hidden libraries of Ladakh, parchment darkened with age still spoke of Shambhala's lamas, who could bend light into bridges. In Mongolian legends, it was the homeland of immortal warriors, waiting beneath the mountains until the hour of renewal. In Chinese chronicles, it shimmered as the Western Pure Land, a luminous court of sages ruled by compassion. Every culture touched by the Himalayas seemed to know that somewhere beyond the snow, perfection endures. And so the seekers multiplied. Some traveled not with relics or offerings, but with notebooks and instruments. In the 13th century, A few Jesuit envoys crossing from India heard tales of a kingdom that outshone all earthly realms. Later, travelers from Russia and Central Asia recorded the same murmurs. Even Genghis Khan, the great storm of the steppes, heard of a northern land where no weapon could wound, no winter could bite. He sent emissaries to find it. They did not return. The Khan believed they had entered the gates of immortality and left them closed behind. By the 17th century, as empires charted seas and catalogued continents, the legend of Shambhala continued to resist definition. Cartographers, desperate to tame mystery, began to ink the word on maps, somewhere near the source of the Indus, sometimes in the shadow of the Kunlun, sometimes in blank spaces they could not name. It became both a question mark and a promise, a signpost pointing towards something the world had not yet forgotten to hope for. But to the lamas of Tibet, Shambhala was never geography, it was principle. They taught that every being carries within them a hidden city of peace. To cultivate that city is to build Shambhala within one's own mind. The Kalachakra initiation, still offered by the Dalai Lama today, is both memory and rehearsal of that inner architecture, the spinning wheel of time that binds galaxies to the rhythm of breath, the endless dance of impermanence that refines chaos into clarity. It is said that those who understand this teaching see Shambhala everywhere. In the golden dust of dawn, in the hum of bees around temple stones, in the small mercies exchanged between strangers. They walk through ordinary streets with extraordinary sight. To them, even the market noise carries the pulse of the sacred, for they know that paradise does not hide. It only waits for eyes that have learned to recognize it. And yet, myths have a way of slipping into history's bloodstream. Each century brings new interpreters. When Mongol monks whispered of the coming of the last king, who would ride forth with banners of light, the prophecy mingled with the politics of empire. Rulers claimed descent from the kings of Shambhala to justify their power. Holy wars were waged beneath the sign of the wheel. The dream of harmony, twisted by ambition, became another excuse for conquest. Still, the myth endured because its heart was incorruptible. Even when men misused its name, the idea itself remained pure. That somewhere, in some form, compassion governs the universe. That when cruelty grows loud, another voice, softer but stronger, will rise to meet it. This was the faith that bound pilgrims to their paths across frozen passes, through tempests and hunger, through the long silence of the high plateaus. They did not walk toward discovery. They walked toward remembrance. In the quiet chambers of the great monasteries, murals bloomed across walls of stone, vast mandalas painted with pigments made from crushed jewels. At the center of each, a radiant palace spiraled upward through layers of color and meaning. The city of Kalapa, heart of Shambhala. There, gods and humans conversed as equals. Rivers of light flowed from compassion's source to irrigate the whole of existence. The monks who painted these visions were not illustrating fantasy. They were mapping consciousness. Each stroke of their brush was a prayer, each hue a note in the music of order. As time wore on, outsiders caught glimpses of these images and mistook them for myth. But to those who traced the wheel of time with their own breath, Shambhala was not imaginary. It was the blueprint of what the world could become if ever humanity remembered its original design. It was civilization perfected, not through law or conquest, but through understanding. From the 10th century onward, the Kala Chakra teachings spread beyond Tibet, reaching Mongolia, China, and eventually the edges of the Western world. Everywhere they went, they carried with them the notion that time itself is not the enemy of peace, but its instrument, that every age, even an age of chaos, moves toward the renewal of harmony. And always, behind the doctrine, behind the prayers, the image of the hidden kingdom shimmered like a mirage that might, at any moment, solidify into reality. It is this promise that has survived every empire and outlived every creed, because beneath the history, beneath the rituals, Shambhala speaks to something universal. The conviction that enlightenment is not escape, but evolution. That humanity itself is capable of flowering into wisdom. Every civilization builds its version of that hope. A golden age remembered, a paradise regained, a horizon unending. All these are reflections of one source, the unseen valley of light. And so, across 1,000 years, the legend has never faded. It rises whenever despair deepens, whenever the world forgets its own potential. Each retelling is a flare in the dark, a reminder that perfection is not lost, but waiting. For Shambhala, whether within or beyond the snow, is less a destination than a direction, the compass point of the soul. And though no traveler has returned with its dust upon his boots, millions have walked a little more gently because they believed it was there. When the wind sweeps over the Himalayas, it carries with it a sound that no ear can measure, a hum beneath the hum, like the echo of creation. The Lamas say it is the breath of the hidden kingdom, exhaled in compassion for the world. It reaches far, through deserts and oceans, whispering to every heart that dares to listen. The journey is not finished. The path still opens. The wheel still turns. Part 2. The Pilgrims of the Himalayas. They began as specks against the immensity of the mountains, lines of figures winding upward through the cold, burdened not by gold or weapons, but by faith. For centuries, the Himalayas have drawn such people, the silent, the stubborn, the searching. They come from valleys where the wind smells of pine, and from plains that shimmer like brass under the sun. They climb for reasons they can rarely name. Some follow ancient prophecies. Some follow the ache that lives beneath all ambitions. The desire to see what cannot be shown. The early pilgrims were monks and mendicants. They walked barefoot until the skin of their feet thickened like bark. They carried prayer wheels whose slow revolutions kept rhythm with their pulse. At night, they slept beside glacial streams and woke to find their robes stiff with frost. Each step was a question offered to the mountain, each breath an answer received in silence. They did not measure progress by distance, but by lightness, the way thought fell away with altitude, the way fear thinned as the air did. With time, others followed. Scholars, merchants, mystics who had heard of the kingdom of perfect peace. They carried relics, offerings, and sometimes books filled with diagrams of the inner world. Among them were the early explorers from the far west, drawn by curiosity disguised as reason. They came with sextants and notebooks, yet even they were changed by the air that seemed to hum with meaning. Many never returned. Those who did spoke differently thereafter, as if ordinary language had grown too coarse for what they had glimpsed. Across the centuries, the roads of pilgrimage formed a lattice over the mountains. Paths wound through Mustang, Dalpo, and Ladakh. Passes opened and closed with the moods of the weather. Whole villages would set out in spring, children and elders alike, turning the wheel of devotion with their feet. They walked not toward escape, but toward alignment with the rhythm of the earth, with the wheel that turns within. To walk was to pray, to reach was to be remade. In their songs, Shambhala was no fortress glittering with gold, but a garden of clarity. The pilgrims sang that there the mind forgets to divide itself, that even the stones glow from within. They sang of monks whose voices could still the wind, of women who carried lamps that never died. Their verses traveled farther than they did. They crossed borders carried by traders and herdsmen, until every campfire in the Himalayas knew at least one line of the hymn to the hidden valley. During the 17th and 18th centuries, as foreign powers pressed upon Tibet, the legend became both refuge and resistance. Lamas spoke of Shambhala as the place where the Dharma would survive when all else was consumed. The promise strengthened those who stood watch on the high passes. It gave meaning to hardship that otherwise would have been despair. Even in defeat, they believed. The spirit of the sacred kingdom retreated only to gather strength. Among those who sought the invisible valley was the Swedish explorer Sven Hedin. In the late 19th century, he wandered the frozen deserts of Central Asia, mapping lakes and mountains no Westerner had seen. He found monasteries that whispered of the hidden land, but pointed in no direction. Another was the Russian painter Nicholas Roerich, who rode with his family across Tibet and Mongolia in the 1920s. He saw in the legend a thread uniting all civilizations, a memory of light buried in human consciousness. His canvases, alive with cobalt and fire, carried the vision of Shambhala to galleries far from the mountains. They reminded the modern world, weary of its own inventions, that beauty still had a home. There was also Alexandra David Neal, a French scholar and opera singer who crossed the Himalayas disguised as a beggar. She entered Lhasa when foreigners were forbidden and lived among the lamas, learning the disciplines of meditation that burn fear to ash. In her journals, she wrote not of conquest, but of listening, how the wind itself seemed to instruct her in impermanence. She wrote that the true pilgrimage ends not at a gate of stone, but in the stillness that follows surrender. For her, Shambhala was not an end point, but a revelation of what the human spirit could become. The 20th century turned the legend into literature. James Hilton's Lost Horizon told of travelers stranded in a monastery, hidden among eternal snows, where age slowed and peace endured. The book became scripture for a world wounded by war. Readers recognized themselves in the weary characters who longed for rest. Through them, Shangri-La entered the vocabulary of hope, a symbol for the gentler civilization humanity feared it had lost. Fiction had revived what faith had kept alive, but the real pilgrims never vanished. Even as airplanes began to cross the peaks their ancestors had climbed, they continued to walk. Old men with prayer beads, children leading donkeys, nuns chanting through sleet. They passed shrines half buried in snow, where butter lamps still burned, their flames bending like small suns. The pilgrims carried no doctrine. They carried presence, the quiet certainty that the act of going itself completes the destination. Some reached remote monasteries where the air shimmered with the smell of juniper and butter oil. Inside, ancient murals flaked, but still glowed with impossible colors. There, the elders taught that every journey through the mountains is a rehearsal for the inward climb. You think you walk toward Shambhala, they would say, but Shambhala walks toward you. Meet it halfway, and you will not need a road. And so the mountain roads became corridors of transformation. Along them, exhaustion turned to insight. Those who ascended with doubt descended with tenderness. Some lost everything and counted it gain. Others found that the farther they went, the more they understood that the kingdom cannot be seen with the eyes that opened at birth. It requires a different sight, one polished by humility. By the mid-century, the pilgrim routes began to change. Borderlines hardened. Politics replaced legend. The great monasteries were emptied by exile and war. Yet even in displacement, the spirit of pilgrimage survived. Tibetan refugees carried their chants across oceans. They built small temples in Nepal, in India, in Europe and America. Each one was a seed of the hidden land, transplanted into new soil. The journey continued, not on foot, but in practice, through meditation, through compassion enacted in daily life. Shambhala had shifted terrain again, as it always does, from mountain to mind, from myth to movement. Every age remakes its pilgrims, Today they come not in caravans, but in single bodies, drawn by a loneliness technology cannot fill. They walk with cameras, notebooks, and sometimes silence. Some reach monasteries restored after decades of ruin. Others find only ruins and a sense of awe. The mountains treat them as they treated all before, without indulgence, without cruelty. They strip away the unnecessary until only sincerity remains. That is the price and the reward. At dusk, when the light thins to silver and the wind tastes of ice, the pilgrims still kneel facing north. They whisper prayers that no longer ask for discovery, but for awakening. In that humility, the legend breathes again. And if one listens closely, beneath the chants, beneath the steady rasp of wind over stone, one can almost hear the faint hum of the wheel of time turning somewhere beyond sight, promising that the journey has meaning. The paths they tread may crumble, the maps may fade, but the longing that drives them endures. For as long as hearts yearn for a place untouched by greed or fear, the pilgrims will rise. They will climb until the air itself sings, and on the highest ridge, where the world falls away into light, they will sense what their ancestors sensed, that Shambhala is not ahead or behind, but within the very act of seeking. Part 3. The Kingdom of Inner Light. There are moments in human history when the veil between myth and revelation grows thin, when what was whispered in temples seems to breathe upon the wind. The legend of Shambhala is one such breath, an echo of the world not as it is, but as it might be when the soul stands fully awake. In the scrolls of the Kala Chakra, the city of Kalapa gleams like the sun within crystal. Its towers rise from terraces of light. Its gates face the four winds, symbolizing balance among all things. The streets are rivers of clarity, where thought itself becomes visible. There is no shadow there, for nothing stands apart from truth. The architecture is both substance and spirit, stone shaped by awareness, color that sings. In its heart stands a temple without walls, where the light of the inner sun burns with tranquil intensity. Neither day nor night, but perpetual dawn. The texts describe Shambhala as a model of cosmic order, an image of the universe perfected. Its kings rule not by decree, but by resonance. They guide as the moon guides the tides. The citizens are said to live without deceit, their minds tuned to harmony as instruments to a hidden melody. In their lives, work and worship are one, because to labor for the well-being of others is the purest prayer. Every word is weighed, every silence is honored. It is a civilization built not on fear, but understanding, a mirror held to what humanity could become if it remembered the laws of compassion. Scholars reading these ancient verses debate whether Kalapa ever stood upon the earth or exists in dimensions unseen. To the mystics of the Himalayas, the answer is simple. It is both. The world we see is only one petal of a greater bloom. Shambhala is another, unfolding just beyond the reach of ordinary perception. Those who live rightly, it is said, move closer to its frequency until, at death or illumination, the two worlds meet and dissolve into one. From this hidden realm flows the radiance called the inner sun. It is not a star in the sky, but the source behind all stars, the pulse that animates every living thing. The monks teach that to touch the inner sun is to touch the origin of consciousness itself, the fire that burns within the smallest seed and the largest galaxy alike. In meditation, they seek not escape, but alignment with that rhythm. For when mind and cosmos breathe together, ignorance withers like frost before dawn. Such language might sound remote to the practical world, yet traces of it appear everywhere in the geometry of mandalas, in the precise symmetry of temples from India to Nepal. Each mandala, circular and infinite, maps the journey from chaos to order, from multiplicity to center. To contemplate it is to walk the streets of Shambhala with the eyes of the spirit. When a monk paints a mandala, he is not creating art, but remembering home. When it is complete, he sweeps it away into the river, teaching that perfection must never be grasped. It exists only in motion, like light upon water. In the myths of Persia, there was once a paradise of pure light called Arianavija, guarded by mountains and eternal snow. In Greece, poets sang of Hyperborea, where men lived without sorrow and the sun circled the sky. In the northern sagas, Asgard shimmered above the clouds. In Chinese lore, the western heaven of Amitabha glowed with the color of mercy. Across continents and centuries, humanity has dreamt one pattern: a realm where goodness reigns naturally, where the divisions of earth dissolve into luminous unity. Shambhala is the Tibetan word for that universal intuition, the mind's memory of perfection. For some, this kingdom is not myth, but memory from another cycle of time. They say the world has been renewed many times. Each age begins in clarity, drifts into confusion, and is reborn through knowledge. When the wheel turns toward darkness, the gates of Shambhala close. When the cycle renews, they open again, allowing wisdom to spill once more into the human world. This rhythm is as steady as the heartbeat of creation. Every fall contains its own restoration, but even the most radiant vision must pass through shadow. The chronicles foretell an age when greed will drown reason, when the sky will be choked with smoke of our own making, when faith will fracture into commerce. In that time, say the texts, the 32nd king of Shambhala will rise, not with armies of conquest, but with the force of awareness. His weapon will be truth, his banner compassion. The battle he fights will not be against nations, but against delusion itself. Through him, the wheel of time will turn once more toward the golden age. To the modern ear, such prophecy might sound like allegory, yet prophecy is often history remembered too soon. every generation feels itself standing on the edge of night, and every generation carries within it the seed of dawn. The idea of the kingdom of light is the idea that the dawn belongs to us, that humanity contains the tools for its own renewal. Shambhala is that promise shaped into story. The monks who keep its name alive do not guard treasure, but perspective. Their daily life is austere. Rice, tea, the steady rhythm of chanting. Yet within that simplicity lies an elegance that no empire has matched. For each act performed in awareness radiates into infinity. Each moment lived without cruelty becomes a lantern along the road. In their quiet labor, they embody the kingdom more faithfully than any map could. Theirs is the civilization of the heart, unseen, undefeated. When the wind blows through the high monasteries, the prayer flags flutter like pages of an invisible book. Each color carries an element: blue for sky, white for air, red for fire, green for water, yellow for earth. Together, they make the world complete. The lamas say that as the wind passes through them, it gathers their blessings and scatters them across the continents. Every gust that brushes a stranger's cheek is a message from the hidden kingdom, reminding the living that they are not forgotten. For the seekers who meditate among the peaks, visions sometimes arise. A city gleaming beneath translucent clouds, towers that seem to sing, figures robed in light moving through corridors of sound. They return changed, unable to describe what they have seen, except to say that it felt like coming home. Skeptics call such things hallucination. Believers call them glimpses of a higher plane. Perhaps both are correct, for what is a vision but reality seen through the clear lens of longing? Even science, cautious heir to wonder, has begun to echo the old metaphors. It tells of energy vibrating in patterns too subtle for the eye, of matter that is mostly emptiness woven by light. In the equations of the physicists, the cosmos dances to invisible frequencies, the same music that the sages of the Himalayas called the wheel of time. Thus the myth bends back into reason, and reason into myth, completing a circle older than either. If Shambhala has a message for this restless age, it is not escape, but equilibrium. The kingdom of inner light teaches that peace is not the absence of struggle, but the mastery of its rhythm. Just as the mountain endures the storm by yielding to it, so too must the spirit learn to stand without resistance. Every trial, every grief, every joy is part of the same design. To see that design is to stand within Kalapa itself. The monks say that once in 1,000 years, a traveler reaches the outer rim of the hidden city. He sees not marble or gold, but the reflection of his own face illuminated from within. For an instant, he understands that the city has always been there, built from his own capacity for compassion, maintained by every act of kindness ever performed. Then the vision fades, leaving him richer by the knowledge that the world is not divided after all, that the gates of Shambhala open wherever the heart acts in harmony with truth. In this way, the kingdom of inner light endures. It flickers in every gesture of generosity, in every moment of insight that pierces confusion. It is the unseen architecture behind civilization itself, the silent blueprint by which humanity measures its better self. We build and destroy, forget and rediscover, but the pattern remains, waiting for each generation to trace it again. Perhaps one day our cities too will hum with that rhythm. Perhaps we will learn that enlightenment is not withdrawal, but participation, an artistry of living that polishes the dull metal of the world until it gleams again. When that day comes, the walls between Shambhala and the earth will vanish, not by miracle, but by maturity, and the mountains, watching since the dawn of memory, will simply nod as if to say, at last, the world has caught up with its own imagination. Part 4. The Age of Seekers, the Western Discovery. By the 19th century, the myth of Shambhala had crossed the mountains. It traveled not in the caravans of pilgrims, but in the pages of journals, in whispers passed between scholars, soldiers, and mystics who watched the frontiers of empire stretch toward the Himalayas. To a Europe drunk on industry and conquest, the East appeared as a mirror, showing not what it possessed, but what it had forgotten. In that mirror shimmered the rumor of a kingdom unspoiled by greed, a civilization that had mastered the art of harmony. And so began the Western search for Shangri-La. It started in libraries and drawing rooms. Maps from missionaries and merchants showed blank spaces labeled terra incognita across Central Asia. Those voids invited projection. Into them, explorers poured every lost ideal of their age. Victorian scientists saw a geological riddle. Theosophists saw the refuge of hidden masters. And politicians saw an advantage waiting to be claimed. What none could admit aloud was that they also saw redemption, a world ravaged by machines, and markets longed for a place where spirit still breathed freely. The first expeditions were cloaked in science. The Swedish geographer Sven Hedin roamed deserts and frozen lakes between 1893 and 1908, mapping what no European had dared cross. He sought the sources of the great Asian rivers, but his notebooks reveal a fascination deeper than cartography. He wrote of monasteries whose chants shook the air like thunder, of monks who spoke of a northern realm untouched by decay. He never found it, yet confessed that something unseen guided his path, as though the mountains themselves were alive with intention. Soon came the mystics, those who believed the heart could reach where the compass could not. Helena Blavatsky and the Theosophists wove Shambhala into a cosmic design, the seat of the great white brotherhood, guardians of humanity's evolution. In their vision, the Himalayas hid adepts who watched over the world's destiny, sending visions to poets and scientists alike. Skeptics scoffed, but the idea struck a deep chord. It promised that knowledge and compassion were not opposed, that wisdom might still guide progress. For a generation wrestling with the ruins of faith, that was miracle enough. In Russia, philosopher mystics spoke of Belovedai, the land of white waters, a Slavic echo of the same dream. In Mongolia, tales of Shambhala merged with Buddhist prophecy. When the world fell into darkness, the king of the north would ride forth with an army of light. These currents converged in the early 20th century when Nicholas Roerich, painter and archaeologist, set out with his wife and son to find the hidden land. They crossed the passes of Tibet under snowstorms and suspicion, guided by lamas who read omens in the flight of cranes. Everywhere they went, Roerich painted the same vision: mountains aflame with inner fire, clouds shaped like mandalas, horizons where matter dissolved into spirit. To those who saw his canvases later, the landscapes seemed impossible. Yet many swore they had seen those colors in dreams. Roerich's expedition became legend. He wrote of messages received through silence, of monks who spoke of the coming of Shambhala, a new age when the wisdom of the East and the science of the West would unite. His words resonated across continents. In an era scarred by war and doubt, people longed to believe that enlightenment could yet bridge the world's divides. Through Roerich, Shambhala entered modern imagination not as a myth to flee into, but as a model for reconciliation, a symbol that beauty and knowledge might still walk together. Then came the novel that turned prophecy into popular myth. In 1933, British writer James Hilton published Lost Horizon, his story of stranded travelers finding a monastery of peace hidden in the Himalayas struck the heart of a world staggering between wars. Within its walls, time moved gently. Ambition melted into serenity. The frenzy of civilization was replaced by quiet purpose. Readers across the West recognized their own yearning. Shangri-La became a synonym for hope, an antidote to the century's fatigue. It passed from page to film, from fiction to collective belief. Even President Franklin D. Roosevelt named his mountain retreat Shangri-La, as though invoking the myth might draw a little peace into history. But the closer the myth came to the modern world, the more it was reshaped by it. Journalists romanticized Tibet as a frozen Eden, forgetting the poverty and discipline that defined monastic life. Tourists sought in the peaks what they could not find in themselves. The West turned the sacred valley into metaphor, commerce, destination. Hotels and resorts borrowed its name, selling serenity by the night. What had been a symbol of awakening risked becoming decoration for exhaustion. Yet even this distortion could not kill the heart of the legend. For behind every traveler who bought the name was another who sought the meaning. Scholars translated the Kalachakra texts. Explorers studied the rituals with respect, and slowly, beneath the noise of appropriation, true dialogue began. Tibetan teachers found new students in Europe and America. Meditation entered cities once defined by haste. The myth had not been stolen, it had migrated. The Cold War gave Shambhala new dimensions. Soviet and Nazi expeditions in the 1930s scoured the Himalayas, convinced that ancient knowledge lay buried there. Both empires hoped to harness it, each believing itself chosen to inherit the world's hidden wisdom. They sent scientists armed with ideology and compasses, and they returned with frostbite and confusion. The mountains had refused to yield their secret to those who came in conquest. The legend remained inviolate, proof that enlightenment cannot be coerced. Meanwhile, in the refugee camps of India and Nepal, exiled monks whispered the old prophecies anew. The fall of Lhasa in 1959 was for them not an ending, but another turn of the wheel of time. The teachings would scatter like seeds and bloom elsewhere. Thus Shambhala, once sought in a single valley, became 1,000 gardens across the world, each mind that practiced compassion, a fragment of the hidden kingdom reborn. By the late 20th century, Western seekers no longer marched with compasses, but with meditation cushions. They read Roweridge and Hilton not as maps, but as metaphors. They came to Dharamsala, to Kathmandu, to the monasteries rising again in the highlands, seeking not escape, but instruction. Some stayed to study the Kalachakra Tantra, learning that the wheel of time turns within as much as around. Others returned home carrying a stillness they had never known before, a sense that the horizon between east and west was not a line, but a bridge. So the myth completed its circuit. Born in the mountains, carried across continents, reflected back as inspiration. Each retelling added a layer, geographic, philosophical, spiritual, until Shambhala became not just a place or promise, but a dialogue between civilizations. It taught the modern age, swollen with power, that progress without wisdom is merely acceleration toward loss. It reminded the weary heart that paradise is not an inheritance, but a practice renewed each day. Now, when airplanes cross the roof of the world in hours, where once caravans took months, the old stories seem to rise again from the cloud tops. Passengers who glance down see nothing but snow and shadow. Yet something in the stillness below stirs an ancient memory. Perhaps it is the echo of the seekers who came before. Or perhaps it is the voice of the mountain itself, murmuring that the true discovery has never been geographical. The path to Shambhala, as the sages said, begins where wonder awakens and possession ends. Thus, the Western discovery closes where the Eastern wisdom began, in humility, in the acknowledgement that the highest knowledge is not owned, but lived. The legend endures because it adapts, forever shifting shape to match the hunger of each age. And though the name Shangri-La may fade beneath new myths, the current beneath it, the longing for a kingdom of peace within a turbulent world, flows on. It is the same current that has guided every seeker since the first pilgrim lifted his face to the wind and stepped into the white silence of the Himalayas. Part 5. The Echoes of Power and Empire. Every myth, when carried too far into the halls of ambition, casts a shadow. Shambhala, born of meditation and mercy, was no exception. In the age when the West sought to master the world through science, and the East struggled to survive beneath the weight of conquest, the legend was claimed by those who mistook holiness for power. They dreamed of finding not enlightenment, but advantage, a hidden source of energy, knowledge, or ancient weaponry that could tilt the balance of history. Thus, what began as a map of the soul was redrawn as a target for empires. By the dawn of the 20th century, the Himalayas had become a stage where explorers, spies, and mystics converged. Beneath the white calm of its peaks, the world's most secret ambitions stirred. The British Empire, stretched across India and Tibet, feared that rival powers might find access to the hidden kingdom first and exploit whatever wisdom or technology it concealed. To London's officers, Shambhala was not myth, but mystery worth investigating. In the colonial imagination, even paradise could be surveyed. Reports arrived from Russian agents in the steppes of Mongolia, describing lamas who spoke of a northern city of light, ruled by immortal sages. In St. Petersburg, these rumors mingled with occult speculation and political intrigue. Philosophers dreamed of a utopia where East and West would unite under the banner of knowledge. Statesmen, however, saw only maps, resources, and strategic high ground. The invisible kingdom became the prize in a game of shadows, the great game played by men who could not conceive that some secrets are kept not by force, but by grace. The early Soviet state took a darker interest. In the 1920s and 1930s, Moscow sponsored expeditions under the guise of science, searching for the heart of ancient wisdom. Bolshevik theorists imagined that the lost knowledge of Shambhala might support their vision of a new man, freed from superstition by reason, yet endowed with almost divine potential. Some believed that if such a civilization had once existed, its remnants might still survive in Tibet or Mongolia, waiting to be awakened. They did not see the irony. A materialist empire yearning for a spiritual origin. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of Europe, another power gazed eastward with fevered eyes. The German Reich, steeped in myth and racial ideology, sought in Shambhala proof of its own invented ancestry. The Ahnenerbe, a pseudoscientific arm of the SS, dispatched expeditions into Tibet between 1934 and 1938, convinced that somewhere among the lamas lay the key to Aryan origins. They came armed with measuring tools, cameras, and conviction. They questioned monks about subterranean tunnels, about hidden masters said to guide humanity from secret chambers beneath the mountains. They collected skulls and manuscripts, hoping to fit revelation into racial theory. But the mountains answered them, as they answered all who came with violence in their hearts, with silence. Those expeditions returned with photographs, maps, and a confusion deeper than before. Their leaders tried to claim success, yet what they had truly found was their own reflection distorted by obsession. They could not understand that the kingdom they sought was built from compassion, not supremacy, that no path of conquest could cross its threshold. History soon swept them away, leaving only their arrogance buried beneath the snow. During the Second World War, the myth of Shambhala seemed to retreat altogether. The world was too loud, too broken for subtle whispers of paradise. But in the ruins that followed, the legend stirred again, this time in the hearts of those who had seen what unchecked power could do. They began to suspect that the real hidden kingdom was not a fortress waiting to be found, but a conscience waiting to be remembered. After 1945, the Cold War brought new forms of hunger. Nations armed themselves with knowledge sharper than swords. Science reached into the atom, into the stars, but rarely into the heart. Whispers of Shambhala resurfaced in laboratories and think tanks, not as religion, but as metaphor. Could wisdom evolve as quickly as technology? Could enlightenment be the next frontier? Philosophers and psychologists began to speak of inner frontiers, echoing the monks who had said the same 1,000 years before. Meanwhile, real Tibet was collapsing under modern empires. In 1950, the Chinese army crossed its borders, declaring liberation, but bringing subjugation. Monasteries were dismantled, scriptures burned, monks imprisoned. The world watched, distracted by its own ambitions, as the last vestiges of the ancient order were scattered to the winds. Yet exile, as prophecy had long foretold, would become the means of preservation. The teachings that once hid behind mountain walls flowed out across the globe. Shambhala had been forced from geography into destiny. In this way, the myth performed its oldest miracle. It survived conquest by transforming. Each empire that tried to seize it ended by carrying it farther afield. Russian scholars took fragments of Tibetan texts to Moscow. German researchers inadvertently spread interest in Buddhist cosmology through Europe. British officers brought back stories that fed Western fascination with meditation. The legend, like the wind that bore it, escaped every cage built for it. It proved that even when power moves mountains, the soul of a myth can pass through stone. The 20th century taught humanity what the sages had whispered all along, that enlightenment and domination cannot coexist. Every attempt to use Shambhala for control ended in ruin. Every person who approached it with humility found transformation. The mountains themselves seemed to enforce this law. Those who sought to extract its power perished in avalanches, storms, or political collapse. Those who sought understanding returned with peace in their eyes. The last echoes of empire faded into the new century. Yet the lesson endures. Shambhala remains untaken, unconquered, its gates invisible to radar and satellite. It survives in the conscience of the world, reminding us that no wisdom can be weaponized without first being destroyed. The age of seekers had passed. The age of self-knowledge had begun. Empires would continue to rise and fall, but the hidden kingdom, untouched by conquest, waited as it always had for humanity to lay down its fear of light. In the quiet between wars, when nations counted losses and the earth counted graves, a different kind of discovery began. Artists, poets, and wanderers turned once more toward the Himalayas, not to claim, but to listen. They found among the exiled monks an undiminished serenity, a gentleness that no army could erase. And in their company, the world learned again what power had forgotten, that the greatest empire is mastery of oneself, that the most unassailable kingdom is kindness. Thus ended the long era of conquest, the centuries when men looked to the mountains for dominion. From their failure rose a new understanding, the realization that paradise cannot be owned, only embodied. Those who still climb toward the invisible valley now do so with bare hands and open hearts, carrying neither flag nor weapon, but the single hope that humility might yet be enough. And in this, perhaps, the old prophecies find fulfillment, for the wheel of time turns through empires as through stars, grinding arrogance into dust, polishing compassion into diamond. Shambhala remains what it has always been, a mirror held to the face of civilization, showing not what we have conquered, but what we have yet to become. Part 6. The Silence of the Mountains. When the shouting of the world grew too loud, the mountains did what they have always done. They listened. They watched empires rise like dust devils and vanish just as quickly. They let the echoes of ambition pass over their slopes and settle into the valleys below, where the wind slowly erased them. And when the guns fell quiet and the borders redrew themselves, a deeper stillness returned to the high passes, a silence older than memory and more enduring than conquest. This was the age when Shambhala vanished from conversation, though not from existence. The 20th century, obsessed with invention and disbelief, looked upon myth as superstition and upon silence as emptiness. The noise of progress filled the world, the hum of engines, the crackle of transmitters, the endless litany of advertisement and ideology. The hidden kingdom was not refuted. It was simply drowned out. Only a few, living among the snows, continued to hear its whisper beneath the static. For those few, silence was not absence. It was substance, a living element as real as air or stone. The monks of the high monasteries, reduced now to handfuls by exile and war, tended to their prayers in ruined halls. Wind moved through the empty cloisters like breath through a flute. Candles burned with steady patience in alcoves that once blazed with hundreds of lamps. The world had turned away, but they had not. They chanted for the healing of the earth, believing that even one syllable of pure intention could outlast 1,000 shouts of hatred. Across the Himalayas, great centers of learning fell into ruin. Libraries that had guarded scriptures for 1,000 years were emptied. Paintings were scraped from their walls. Bells were melted down for metal. Where once scholars debated the nature of reality, soldiers now marched. And yet, in the scattered ashes, a strange endurance glowed. Texts hidden in yakskin bundles found their way into the hands of refugees. Young novices carried fragments of mandalas in their robes. As they fled across the passes into India and Nepal, the kingdom was breaking. But in that breaking, its light scattered like seeds. In the refugee camps of Dharamsala, Bodh Gaya, and Kathmandu, the keepers of the old knowledge began again, with almost nothing, just voices, memories, and a few rescued books. They built temples from mud and prayer, from patience and teaching. Children who had never seen Tibet learned to write its vanished alphabet by lamplight. Every dawn, monks would climb rooftops to hang new strings of prayer flags in the thin air, as though restitching heaven to earth. And the wind, obedient to its oldest duty, carried those colors and mantras into the world beyond, scattering the syllables of compassion into skis that had forgotten their own purpose. Those who visited these makeshift monasteries often wept without knowing why. Perhaps it was the simplicity of the rhythm: prayer, labor, meal, prayer, or the way even laughter seemed touched by reverence. Here, silence was not imposed, but cultivated. It had weight, shape, fragrance. It did not mute the world. It revealed the undertone beneath it. To sit among the monks was to feel one's heartbeat slow, one's thoughts unfold like snow melting in sunlight. The noise of history lost its power. This was what Shambhala had meant all along: the triumph of stillness over storm. Meanwhile, outside those sanctuaries, the modern world accelerated. Cities glowed brighter, machines spoke louder, the sky filled with satellites. Humanity stretched its reach toward the stars, but forgot how to be still beneath them. Yet even in the concrete labyrinths of modern life, silence sought cracks through which to bloom. Meditation centers opened in forgotten corners of Western cities. People who had never seen a mountain closed their eyes and found one within. The language of mindfulness entered offices, hospitals, schools. Few knew they were echoing teachings born on Himalayan slopes, but the essence was unchanged. the rediscovery of quiet. And so, while the physical Tibet lay under occupation, its spirit began to move freely through the world. It traveled in translations, in chants recorded on tape, in the simple gesture of one human sitting in awareness of another. The Dalai Lama, himself a child of exile, carried the Kalachakra initiation to the West. Tens of thousands gathered in stadiums and fields to receive a ritual once performed in secret caves. For a few days, microphones amplified what had once been whispered, and the air trembled with the same syllables that had once rolled through the corridors of Shambhala. The sound was no longer confined by geography. It had entered the bloodstream of humanity. Still, for the keepers of the ancient ways, this spreading of the Dharma was both victory and grief. They rejoiced that the teachings survived, but mourned the homeland that had become legend in a single lifetime. Elder monks spoke of the mountains as if of a lost parent, majestic, strict, forgiving. Some refused to leave the high plateau. They vanished into hermitages carved into cliffs, choosing to fade where their ancestors had meditated. In their isolation, they became living relics, reminders that devotion can outlast history itself. Travelers who encountered them often wrote of the stillness that seemed to radiate from their presence. It was said that one could hear the beating of one's own heart more clearly near them, as though the world itself paused to listen. These hermits did not speak of Shambhala, they embodied it. Their lives were maps written in humility, their breath a language beyond words. Through them, the legend remained alive, not in parchment or monument, but in being. The silence of the mountains is not void. It is full of unseen labor, the slow work of ice carving valleys, of wind smoothing stone, of stars rising and falling with ancient precision. The monks who watched these processes learned that patience is the rhythm of creation. They understood that everything loud burns quickly, while everything quiet endures. To them, the collapse of monasteries, the fall of empires, even the loss of homeland were not endings, but phases of the same great breathing. The universe exhales order, inhales chaos, and in between lies equilibrium, the moment of peace we call Shambhala. In that understanding lies the secret of survival, for the myth of the hidden kingdom was never meant to escape destruction, but to transcend it. Every time the world forgets, silence restores. Every time cruelty ascends, compassion waits underneath like groundwater. The mountains hold this memory not as lesson, but as instinct. They stand because standing is their nature, just as mercy is the nature of Shambhala. Pilgrims still climb, though fewer now. Some come with cameras, others with questions that no photograph can answer. They find ruins wrapped in snow, shrines reclaimed by moss. At first they grieve, but then they notice the quiet, not empty, but attentive, like a great creature sleeping with one eye open. In that quiet, they begin to feel what the the old texts meant when they spoke of the return of the hidden kingdom, not a place restored, but a state remembered. In the modern age, where information multiplies faster than understanding, silence becomes rebellion. To pause, to listen, to speak only when truth requires, these acts are revolutionary. Perhaps that is why Shambhala chose to hide in stillness, because stillness cannot be colonized. It cannot be bought, sold, or silenced. It waits in the spaces no one notices, in the breath before speech, in the hush before dawn, in the split second when a soldier lowers his weapon or a child forgives. There the kingdom lives. At night, when the wind moves through the high peaks, it carries sounds that are almost words. Some say it is the echo of monks chanting across centuries. Others say it is the voice of the mountains themselves. But those who know, truly know, understand that it is both the landscape and the prayer indistinguishable. That is the real meaning of Shambhala's silence. Not the absence of sound, but the unity of all things that have ever spoken. In this silence, the future waits. Civilizations will continue their noisy ascent and inevitable decline. New empires will name themselves eternal and crumble in their turn. But the high country will remain patient, preserving the rhythm that the world has forgotten. And somewhere among those peaks, unseen and unmeasured, the hidden kingdom will continue to shine, its light muffled by snow, its truth guarded by quiet, its gates open only to those who can hear the song within the silence. For that is how Shambhala endures, not as a monument, but as a pause in the world's endless speaking, a moment where creation listens to itself and knows it is good. Part 7. The Reawakening, the Inner Shangri-La. The centuries of noise began to falter, and from beneath the machinery of progress rose a quieter rhythm, the pulse of reflection. The world, exhausted by its own velocity, started to look inward again. What empire had failed to discover in the snows of the Himalayas, humanity began to sense within itself. The myth of Shambhala, which had once circled the earth like a lost echo, began to return, not as a rumor of geography, but as the outline of a forgotten truth. That paradise is not a place we enter, but a way of seeing that enters us. At the dawn of the 21st century, the word Shangri-La no longer meant the unreachable valley of old maps. It meant something subtler and more urgent. It meant peace amidst chaos, balance within excess, gentleness in the presence of power. It was invoked by poets and therapists, architects and scientists, monks and musicians, each in their own language, was reaching toward the same idea, the rediscovery of stillness within movement, harmony within the noise of civilization. From the refugee monasteries of India and Nepal, new teachers emerged, carrying the light of their lineage into the wide world. They spoke in the accents of many nations, but in the cadence of one truth. Compassion is not luxury, it is survival. The Dalai Lama traveled from capital to capital, from temples to universities, preaching the same lesson that the first king of Shambhala had written in the Wheel of Time, that inner peace is the foundation of outer peace. In his wake, tens of thousands gathered to receive the Kala Chakra initiation. For days, cities became mandalas, streets filled with the murmur of prayers, faces lifted towards something invisible yet near. It was as if the ancient kingdom had unfolded for a brief moment above the modern world. Its gates open wide enough for anyone who dared to believe that compassion could be stronger than fear. Around the same time, science began to listen to silence. Physicists, staring into the subatomic haze, discovered that matter is less solid than song. Neuroscientists found that meditation reshapes the very structure of the brain. Each revelation sounded like an echo of an older wisdom. The understanding that reality is interwoven, that the observer and the observed are threads of one cloth. The mystic and the mathematician, once enemies, began to speak in converging metaphors. It was as if the wheel of time, turning through millennia, had at last brought reason and faith to the same horizon. Artists followed. Painters filled their canvases with the geometry of mandalas. Filmmakers used the imagery of the hidden valley to tell stories not of escape, but of return. Musicians recorded albums of chant and silence. Dancers shaped movements from the slow grace of prayer wheels. Everywhere, fragments of the ancient myth resurfaced, refined, translated, sometimes distorted, yet always luminous at the core. The legend had changed costume, but the essence remained. The belief that humanity, despite its violence, is capable of harmony. But every resurrection carries temptation. The myth of Shangri-La, reborn in the age of marketing, was again dressed in luxury. Hotels took its name. Perfumes borrowed its scent. Advertisements promised its serenity in exchange for currency. For a while, the hidden kingdom seemed trapped in the glare of neon. Its sacred syllables sold like trinkets. Yet myths are resilient. They know how to hide in plain sight. Even as commerce profaned the name, individuals quietly reclaimed the meaning. Meditation spread from monasteries to living rooms, from ashrams to corporate towers. People who had never heard of Shambhala began to practice its essence. Attention, kindness, restraint. Without knowing it, they were rebuilding the invisible city brick by brick within themselves. Meanwhile, in the land once called the roof of the world, a strange metamorphosis began. Tibet, long closed to outsiders, opened its borders to tourists. Trains rolled across plateaus where once only yaks had wandered. Cities grew where prayer fields had lain silent. Some feared that the old spirit would vanish beneath asphalt and screens. Yet deep in the valleys, beyond the reach of roads, monasteries still rang their morning bells. Young monks clothed in crimson, streamed through courtyards holding smartphones and prayer beads in the same hands. The sacred and the modern were no longer enemies, but roommates, learning the uneasy art of coexistence. Even here, the legend persisted, less as prophecy, more as memory. The teachers reminded their students that the real Shangri-La is not destroyed by progress, because it does not live in architecture. It lives in awareness. In the cities of the world, awareness itself became a form of pilgrimage. People learned to sit still for 10 minutes in the midst of traffic, to eat in silence, to breathe as if the act were holy. In hospitals, meditation eased pain. In prisons, it softened hatred. In schools, children were taught to close their eyes, not as punishment, but as exploration. This was the new road to Shambhala, no longer a trail of snow and stone, but a path of attention through the crowded heart of the modern world. Somewhere in all this reawakening, the ancient prophecy found its new voice. The 32nd king, the wrathful wheel-turner, no longer rode a horse of flame across the sky. He rode in the actions of ordinary people, choosing empathy over apathy, creation over destruction. The army of light, foretold by the scriptures, turned out not to be an army at all, but a generation learning to see itself as one body breathing together. The battle was not against nations, but against indifference, not fought with swords, but with understanding. And thus the idea of Shambhala began to evolve from myth into movement. Tibetan masters, such as Churgyam Trungpa, brought its teachings to the West, founding what they called the Shambhala path, a secular practice for cultivating enlightened society. Students gathered in cities far from the Himalayas, meditating amid skyscrapers and subways, proving that the sacred can flourish even in steel. They spoke of basic goodness as the ground of human nature, of courage as the willingness to be present. It was not exotic, it was practical. Shambhala, at last, was no longer remote. It had entered the bloodstream of culture. In art galleries and meditation halls, the image of the mandala reappeared circles within circles, the universe mapped as a flower of symmetry. Each pattern was a reminder that order is possible, that chaos is only harmony waiting for recognition. The ancient idea of the inner sun returned too, transformed into the modern language of mindfulness, the awareness that radiates without burning, illuminating without judging. People began to realize that enlightenment was not an event, but a habit, a way of meeting each moment as though it were sacred ground. Amid all this revival, some voices warned of dilution, of wisdom turned into fashion. But even dilution has value. It spreads essence into unexpected places. A child repeating a half-remembered mantra is still touching mystery. A scientist meditating for focus is still entering silence. The sacred does not vanish when misunderstood. It simply waits for understanding to catch up. Shambhala has always known how to survive misunderstanding. That is why it still lives. Now, in the digital age, the myth travels faster than any caravan. It flickers on screens, whispered in documentaries, quoted in songs. Some dismiss it as fantasy. Others sense that its persistence is itself proof of truth. For every civilization that rises believes itself unique. Yet all dream of the same peace, the same reunion of matter and spirit. The story of the hidden kingdom is humanity's oldest self-portrait, painted again and again until we finally recognize our own face. And still the mountains watch. They see plains tracing silver lines across their skis. They hear languages merging like rivers. They no longer guard a secret place, for the place has dissolved into principle. What remains is the lesson that no amount of wealth, technology, or conquest can replace the clarity born of quiet mind, that the true frontier is inward, that every being who learns to dwell in awareness, even for a breath, contributes to the reconstruction of paradise. Look around, the signs are everywhere. In a nurse holding the hand of a dying stranger, in an engineer designing machines that heal instead of harm, in a teacher who turns a classroom into a sanctuary of thought, in a protester who refuses violence, in a child who plants a tree. Each is a citizen of the hidden kingdom, though they may never hear its name. Shambhala has stepped out of myth and into the bloodstream of daily life, dispersed but indestructible. It no longer needs to be found because it has already found us. And yet the mountains remain, their silence unchanged, their patience infinite. They wait not for pilgrims, but for listeners. When the wind crosses their peaks, it carries a tone, neither command nor invitation, but recognition. It says, "You are the legend now. The kingdom you seek has always been walking beside you, breathing when you breathe." The gate stands open, not at the edge of the world, but at the center of the heart. So the myth completes its long return, from scripture to rumor, from rumor to empire, from empire to silence, from silence to awakening. It has traveled the full circle of the wheel of time. The hidden valley has become the human mind. The monks were right. When the world forgets kindness, Shambhala hides. When the world remembers, it rises again. And today, in small acts that pass unnoticed, in the calm between two breaths, in the courage to care, the gates are opening once more, not with thunder or miracle, but with the soft sound of awakening spreading through the noise of history like dawn through mist. The horizon brightens, the legend breathes, the inner Shangri-La, eternal and unlost, shines quietly within the living. Epilogue, the eternal dawn. At the edge of the world, where the wind ceases to be sound and becomes light, dawn begins again. The mountains, ancient beyond reckoning, stand unmoved. Their summits catch the first color of morning, a pale fire that grows, spilling gold into the hollows of stone and snow. Each peak ignites one after another, like lamps in an invisible temple, until the entire horizon glows. The world breathes, and for a heartbeat, everything mountain, cloud, river, breath is one. It is said that the first sunrise was like this, not a moment, but an understanding. The earth, newly born, opened its eyes and saw itself reflected in light, and in that reflection recognized its purpose: to live, to create, to remember the divine through form. Every dawn since then is a repetition of that first awakening, a reminder written in fire across the sky that renewal is not a miracle, but a rhythm. And this is what Shambhala has always meant: not an escape from time, but its completion. As the sun rises higher, mist lifts from the valleys, hidden villages emerge, terraced fields shine with frost. The chants of unseen monks drift like smoke between ridges, thin and endless. Their words are not supplication, but gratitude. They do not ask for paradise. They thank the world for already being one. Far below, cities stir. Glass towers catch the same dawn as the peaks, and in their reflection, the mountains seem to descend into the heart of civilization. People wake, some hurried, some weary, some lost. They do not know that their every breath participates in the same sunrise. The rhythm that turns galaxies is the rhythm that lifts their eyelids each morning. They too belong to the ceremony of renewal. Across continents, in rooms filled with screens and electric light, a few pause to watch the sun through windows. They feel something they cannot name, a hush that outlasts the noise, a sense that everything, for an instant, fits. In that pause lies the doorway that seekers once sought in the snow. In that stillness, the hidden kingdom breathes through them. The monks say that dawn is the most merciful hour because the world forgives itself anew. Every shadow that clung to the night dissolves without argument. The light does not avenge, it reveals. It falls equally on ruin and temple, on the wound and the healer. It needs no permission to shine. Such is the nature of enlightenment. It arrives quietly, indiscriminately, without condition. It does not ask who is worthy. It simply dawns, and those who have eyes to see recognize in that light the reflection of the inner sun, the same that burns at the heart of Shambhala. Its radiance is not limited to holy mountains or hidden valleys. It burns in factories, in schools, in the trembling hands of those who dare to be kind. Everywhere that light touches becomes sacred ground. For centuries, humanity looked for paradise as if it were elsewhere. We searched the horizon, climbed the impossible, measured the infinite, but the gates were never locked. They were only overlooked. They stand in the space between two thoughts, in the breath that forgives, in the hand that offers help without expecting reward. These are the entrances to Shambhala, scattered across the ordinary world, invisible yet innumerable. Each act of compassion opens one. If the Kala Chakra teaches anything, it is this: The wheel always turns. Ages of darkness yield to ages of light, and back again. Yet the center of the wheel, the still point around which everything moves, remains unchanged. That center is awareness, the quiet fire in every soul. Empires will crumble. Science will rewrite itself. Stars will die and be reborn. But the flame that knows itself will not flicker. It is the pulse of Shambhala, steady beneath the tides of time. Listen closely, and you can hear it even now, beneath the hum of traffic, beneath the politics and the fear. A low, resonant vibration, the world's heartbeat continuing its patient rhythm. It says, do not despair. The path never ends. It says, what you seek has been seeking you. It says, awaken. Somewhere a bell rings, a thin, bright tone carried by wind. Perhaps it hangs outside a monastery. Perhaps it is only the echo of memory. Its sound crosses oceans, deserts, cities, ears. It does not need translation. Wherever it is heard, the listener becomes a pilgrim. For an instant, every person who listens stands upon the same threshold, facing the same invisible gate. And in that shared listening, the hidden kingdom shines again. The ancient texts predicted a time when the teachings of Shambhala would circle the earth, when its light would no longer belong to one nation or creed. That time is now, not through conquest, but through connection, not through kings, but through consciousness. The wheel of time turns quietly, bringing the legend full circle from myth to history to heart. So remember, when you see a mountain at dawn, when you hear silence in the middle of chaos, when you feel compassion stir unbidden in your chest, that is the breath of the hidden kingdom passing through you. You are not outside it. You are its continuation. Every kindness extends its borders. Every awakening expands its light. The monks were right. The valley is invisible because it is everywhere. And as the last shadows retreat from the snow, the mountains shine as they did at the beginning. Their peaks blaze gold, their flanks shimmer silver, their rivers sparkle like strings of prayer beads, uncoiling toward the sea. Somewhere beyond sight, the temple of Kalapa gleams again, not in marble, but in the awareness of those who finally understand. The kingdom never fell. It was waiting, patient as stone, for humanity to rise to its height. The camera of the mind pulls back, beyond peaks, beyond clouds, until the earth itself turns, bathed in the same light. From this distance, there are no borders, no nations, no divisions, only a blue sphere alive with sunrise. Everywhere dawn, everywhere Shambhala. The world breathes again. The wheel turns. The legend is complete. And the whisper that began in the snow becomes a voice, clear and tender. The dawn is eternal, and it begins within you.